All right, what is up, my play-by programmers? Welcome. This is going to be my first video in a series about desynced behaviors. We're going to call it like desynced behavior basics because I'm still pretty new to the game, so I only really know the basics. So if you're looking at getting into automation at all, especially if you're looking to join the Automation League that I'm starting, which is going to be a series of competitions, including PvP competitions that are going to be done entirely through behavior automation, then this is a great place to get started if you're like me and you don't really know diddly squat about programming. So let's take a look. First thing you're going to look at here is this is where you create your behaviors, right? This is your library. You can figure out what to show. You have blueprints and behaviors. So behaviors are your node trees. Blueprints, which we'll get into eventually, but these are things like buildings or bots that have like pre-set up components, preloaded behaviors, stuff like that. So when you make them or when you put them down, they just immediately can start doing whatever process you set them up for. So blueprints are actually pretty important and pretty intertwined with behaviors. Now, your behaviors are your node trees. And so, like these right here, that just kind of do stuff. Now, you can also create folders here. You see, I have a needs review folder, and then you can go ahead and put different behaviors or blueprints in here and keep it nice and organized. I promise you want to start off with some sort of organization because very quickly you're going to start getting ideas and you're going to start putting those ideas on your library and you're going to start getting overwhelmed really quick when you start trying to find certain things or remember where you put certain things. So get yourself an organizational structure and figure that out. The next thing you have here is your paste item. So this one's actually really important to know how to use. So all of these are copyable. And you'll see they give you, when you copy them to clipboard, they give you a totally random string of letters and numbers and symbols. And that string is all of the stuff that's in this particular behavior. And so this paste item is actually really important because if I create a new behavior here and I go into it and I hit OK and I press V and I paste this and I put it on here, sometimes if I do it this way, it'll actually break. Some of these connections can break, especially when you're using like jumps and labels and stuff like that. It can get pretty bad. So you don't want to do it that way. Instead, you want to paste it right here. And then not only when you paste it, do you get the name, right? It keeps the name and the icon and all that stuff. It doesn't break all of your stuff. It keeps, one of the things it won't do is if you have parameters, it doesn't make the parameters if you just paste this inside of here. So you always want to be using that paste item function. Very, very important. So now let's go take a look at what goes inside. So starting in the top left here, first things first, actually, whenever you start a new behavior, it is going to ask you to name it. Make sure you do that. If you don't name them, then you're just going to have a ton of behaviors, all named new behavior. And in about 3 days, you're going to be totally confused. You have no idea what's going on. Name your behaviors. So we're going to go in here to YouTube Tester. We're just going to delete these right here. And you'll look up here in the top left. You have YouTube Tester. You can change the name anytime you want. And then you have, and I didn't find this out until just today, you have your icon. So you can actually change the icon that appears. And if I save that, we look, now YouTube Tester has this mineral icon. So there's lots of cool icons that you can put on here. You've got all your different item icons. You've got all your different unit icons and building icons, as well as different types of resources and stuff like that. You have your informational icons, so you could color code things. You can use these info types down here. These are actually really important. We'll get into this a lot when we do arrays, but these are really big for like arrays and loops. I think these are really important. But they give some really good information, so you can use any of these that you might want. But very important to be able to do that. And then you have your description, which is just you. This is a YouTube test behavior. Boom. I actually just found this. So this is a YouTube test behavior. So this is just a description for your behavior. So you can give information because these behaviors are shareable, but also because of the way the server structure is set up in this game, it's actually really easy to work with other players to control a single faction. And so this is really good for giving other people who might be working with you information so that they can help you and do some cool stuff. So yeah, that's the big informational stuff up here in the corner. Now you've got your behavior options. These options are about two of the variable types. They're about variables and arrays, and they just dictate when those variables get reset. Are they getting reset every time the code loops, or are they getting reset every time the code is stopped and started again, or are they getting reset every time you get a totally new code? And so it's really important to look at that. We'll look at these more specifically when we specifically go over variables and arrays. Those are going to be like two of my next videos for basic behaviors. Then we've got our base registers. These are registers that are shared by every building and unit type. These are exposed registers, which means they're accessible from the outside. So if we take a look here, we click one of these, you can see these are the exposed registers. These are also registers. And then if we added, we can actually go into this guy and we can add parameters here. And then if we look, we'll actually have some more exposed registers. So these are just variables that are exposed out to the world. So very, very important. Now you'll notice these are specifically attached to this behavior controller. These are specifically attached to this unit, not to the behavior controller. And we'll go over all of that in a little more depth when we get to registers, which will be in the next 4 or so videos. So we're going to go back into here. We already looked at parameters. These are just registers that we can add. We've got all of our nodes down here. Nodes you can think of as pre-programmed behaviors. They've got inputs, they've got outputs. They're just there to be kind of black boxes to do certain things. They've got a bunch of categories over here, right? Unit, movement, component. Flow is kind of like logic, like your loops and your comparators and stuff like that. Math is all of your mathematics function. If you're going to do any big behavior stuff, you're going to want to dive into mathematics because that's mathematics makes the world go round, right? It's computers and math go hand in hand. So if you want to really get some cool automation going on, get in the mathematics. You've got auto base. These are all with AI behavior controllers. So you won't actually have access to these until a little later in the game. You've got your globals, which is kind of big picture stuff. And then you've got your memory. These specifically are for your memory array down here. So anytime you want to do anything with your memory array, these are the things that you have to use to do that. Inside of here is your big old window, right? This is where you pull these things. This is where, you get to look at, like, hey, and set up your behavior. Up here, you have save as a new behavior. So if I was in here and I was already looking at, for example, my resource check, and I wanted to add something, right? Let's add a couple of things in here. And I didn't want to save it as this, right? I want to save it as something else because I like this, but I'm just adding some stuff to it for something else. Then I can hit save as new behavior, and I can put new resource check. And I can hit save, and now we're in new resource check. I'm going to close out of that. Now I've got resource check, and I've got new resource check. So if you're working off of an existing behavior and you've made some changes and you don't know exactly how they're going to work, don't save them under your current behavior. Save them under a new behavior, put something like new in there or test, or get yourself an icon that you always use for tests or something, and then make it a little different so that you don't lose your work. You've got clear behavior, so we can get rid of everything on here. And then you've got this one is actually really important, show help. So you've got some help topics here, right? This will give you the basics, kind of the stuff we're running through right now. We'll give you some information here. So if you'd rather see it written, boom, you've got it. The next thing you've got over here is some example or starter templates. Now, this I didn't know existed. And I think it's actually because these don't light up very well. So I thought this was just kind of showing me like what things were going to look like, because I just kind of skimmed this. But these are example templates, and you can look at them, or you can do a couple of things. You can load them straight up. So I can just, boom, now I have go home if damaged. But the other thing that you can do here is I can go into the resource check. I can hit this. I can click one of these and I can append that code, which means to add it to the end. So now I've got my resource check with that template attached to it. So there's some pretty good code snippets in here. Some things you might use. You might even just go ahead and turn all of these into behaviors in your library so that you can come access them anytime you want to. But that's super important to be able to get to have access to. This is how I learned about memory, is they have a memory example in here that's pretty good and helped me learn about that. So we're actually going to look at that when we do our memory array video. Next, you've got your help instructions down here. So when you click on one of these, if you've got this lit up, it gives you a little description. It'll tell you about the inputs and outputs of that particular node. It'll tell you about all the stuff that's going to happen in there. Some of these are really well documented, and some of them have literally nothing. You can see this resource doesn't say anything here, so it's not telling you what that resource output is about. On the left side is always inputs. On the right side is always outputs. But yeah, so it's not giving you very much information. But then if we like check altitude, you can see, boom, all of a sudden we've got all this info that tells us all kinds of stuff about our inputs and outputs and what that function does. So I don't know. I assume they're going to go in and do some more documentation. But honestly, if you know enough about how the variables and data structures inside of the behavior system work, then the rest of this can kind of just be guess and check. They're named reasonably enough. Check battery is obviously about checking, how much power you've got. Check altitude, obviously, about checking your height. Can equip, obviously, about finding out if you can equip an opponent to a certain unit. So you can kind of guess and check your way through that if you understand how to manipulate data inside of here and get most of the things you want to do done. So the first thing we're going to talk about in the next set of videos is going to be all about variables and parameters and the array and faction registers, which are faction-wide variables and very important. But moving right along here, the next thing we've got is view current variables. So you can open that up and see what your values are actually at. I don't have anything. Hang on, let me see if I can find one that has some variables that it might show us. Sure, let's load this one. Oh, I know why it's not working. It's because I'm looking at the general ones and not the ones actually on. There we go. So if you're looking at an active, so when you're in your library, these are like the base versions of your behaviors. They're inactive. And then you get an instance of these behaviors on your unit. And then when you go and look at that, when you hit view current values, you'll see that the values of some of these things are changing. Now, there aren't any values in any of these right now, but it'll actually show you, the icon. So if you're targeting something or something like that, it'll show you visually what the value is. Instead of like this, you just get this A here. So this gives you an opportunity to kind of see what's happening. It's really important when you go to step through your different values. You can pause and step through. And so you can see if you've got this on here, how your variables are changing every time you go through a step. And then you could just go right back to play. The next thing you've got here is your memory array. This is super important. The memory array is a 2-axis array. So you've got your indexes, which are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, on and on and on. And then you've got your identifiers, or IDs, which are the same as all of these different IDs that we had up here. You can use a lot of different icons as IDs. And then you just put those IDs over here, and I'll show you how to do all this when we get into our array video. And then the value is at the intersection of the index and the ID. And so if you had like a mineral here, right, like the metal icon, then metal icon 3 is this value. Metal icon 2 is this value. And then maybe you've got like the crystal icon right here. So crystal icon 2 is a different value. Crystal icon 5 is a different value. And so you can put a whole mess of information in here that can be used within your behavior. So very, very important to understand arrays. The next thing you've got here is inspect running behavior. So if you open this up, it'll tell you where every single instance of your behavior is running. So you see this behavior says loaded in 3 behavior controllers. All 3 of them are running. So I can click, and you're not really seeing anything happen, but I'm moving to a different unit that has the same behavior inside of it. So I'm just clicking through, and this will also help, right? If you look here, you can open these up so you can see what maybe your different vehicles or buildings or whatever that are running these behaviors, you could see what different variables they might have based on what they're doing. And then you've got your stop program, you've got your play, you've got your pause, and then you've got your step through, which just allows you to slowly go through the steps and look at things. This is really good for troubleshooting and debugging. You've got your undo, which is just like paint. Undo, redo, undo, redo. Super good. You've got your apply, which allows you to save and stay inside of the behavior. So you can do a bunch of stuff and then save, and then do a bunch of stuff and then save without ever having to leave the behavior. You've got X, which takes you right out of the behavior. And then you've got this check mark here, which is both of those things combined. So you can apply and close, which will go ahead and save what you just did and close it out. So boom, we close it out. We've still got this clear links. So we can delete that. Boom, we're good. And that is the basics of your behaviors. We're going to move on next to internal variables, and then we'll talk about registers, and then we'll talk about arrays, and then we'll talk about faction registers in that order, probably. So internal variables, parameters, arrays, and then faction registers. And if you can get those 4 things down, then the rest of this is just how are you manipulating that data. But you have to know how to save data. You have to know how to share data. You have to know, what's exposed, what's private, where can different types of data go and stuff like that. It's very, very important. So we're going to really drill down on those things in the next few days. And then from there, it's all just kind of theory and, handcrafting something for a specific objective. So thanks everybody for coming and taking a look at this. I hope you all really enjoy building some behaviors. And if you want to get really deep in the automation, I am also starting the Automation League, which is going to be a series of contests, time trials or PvP competitions or all kinds of different stuff like that with varying degrees of automation and varying degrees of combat or, just getting to a certain point in the game or whatever. So build yourself a team. This is designed really well to help you work together as a team to build these automations. So get some friends together, get on the official Discord and hit me up. I haven't made the Discord for the Automation League yet, but I am on the Desynced official Discord. So hit me up over there and we can chit chat about automation and stuff. But yeah, if you got any use out of this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And I will see you all on the next one. I hope you have a great day.